I'm calling the regular business meeting to order this evening. To view this meeting's presentation documents, please access Board Docs. The link to the Board Docs website can be found via the D38 website at www.lewispalmer.org on the Board of Education meeting webpage. To view the live stream video of this meeting, please go to the Lewis Palmer School District 38 YouTube page. Mr. Schwartz, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Happy to. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, I skipped roll call. I'm sorry, Ms. Wood. Roll.
Mr. Clausen.
Here.
Ms. Phillips.
Here.
Mr. Schwartz.
Here.
Mr. Taylor. Here. And Ms. Upchurch. Here.
I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Ms. Wood.
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor. Here. Ms. Upchurch.
At this time, we are going to administer the oaths of office.
I, Chris Taylor,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully perform
that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office of school director
the duties of office of school director
as required by law
and
will support the Constitution of the United States
and will support the Constitution of the United States
and the laws made the Constitution of the State of Colorado
the Constitution of the State of Colorado
and the laws made pursuant thereto.
and the laws made pursuant thereto. And my first official act. I, Tiffany Upchurch, do solemnly swear
I, Tiffany Upchurch, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully perform
that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office of school director
the duties of the office of school director
as required by law
as required by law
and will support the Constitution of the United States,
and will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
and the laws made pursuant thereto.
and the laws made pursuant thereto.
Yes, you take one.
So our next item of business is B2, election, appointment of officers. Per Colorado statutes, CRS 2232, 104, 3, and 4, the board policy, BDA, board organization meeting, the nomination process for president and vice president of the Board of Education will be conducted and followed by appointments of secretary and treasurer. May I ask for nominations for the office of board president?
I'd like to make a motion to nominate and elect Chris Taylor as board president.
I will second that motion.
Ms. Wood.
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Aye.
Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
I'll now ask for nominations for the office of Board Vice President. And in so doing, I'd like to nominate Teresa Phillips.
Can I second that motion as well?
Please. Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen,
Aye.
Ms. Phillips,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Aye.
Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate for the office of Board Secretary and Board Treasurer. I nominate Tiffany Upchurch to be appointed as the Secretary of the Board with board agreement by roll call vote.
Mr. Clausen,
Aye.
Ms. Phillips,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Aye.
Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
I nominate Ron Schwartz to be appointed as Treasurer of the Board with board agreement by roll call vote.
Mr. Clausen,
Aye.
Ms. Phillips,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Aye.
Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
I appoint Kitty Overton to serve as Assistant Treasurer with board agreement by consensus. Are we all good?
Conceded.
You guys are great. I appoint Vicki Wood to serve as Assistant Secretary with board agreement by consensus. Excellent. Thank you all. The next matter is we have to sign affidavits of confidentiality. Ms. Wood, will you take charge here?
I think you each want to take just a moment to read this and sign this right now. And then I will ask you for a statement of affirmation.
He's watching all this.
Do you each solemnly affirm, under penalty of perjury, that the statements made within these affidavits of confidentiality are true?
I do.
I do.
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item C, recognitions and comments. First, we'll start with community recognition. I believe, Dr. Summers, you're going to recognize several responders, first responders from our community.
We are. We're happy to tonight, and I believe Ms. Phillips is going to help us with the introductions and the recognition. So Ms. Phillips, would you like to read through our list? I'm not sure that everybody that we had thought was going to be here was able to make it, but we can recognize them nonetheless. And then if we call your name, if you could please come up, and we'll bestow a certificate, and we'll take some pictures as well.
Sure. In no particular order of importance, and everybody is equally important, Chief Andy Kovacs, Tri-Lakes Monument Fire Protection District. Chief Christopher McCarthy, Palmer Lake Fire Department. Chief Sean Hemingway, Monument Police Department. Chief Jason Vanderpool, Palmer Lake Police Department. Chief Kevin Nielsen, Woodmore Public Safety, Woodmore Improvement Association. Deputy Chad Wheat, Lewis Palmer High School SRO. Okay. Deputy Corey Adkison, Palmer Ridge High School SRO. Deputy Josie Haig, Monument Academy SRO, not here tonight. And Dennis Coates, D38 Chief of Security and Safety. And is there one more in the back that I may not have the name of on my list? Oh, well, he might as well come up. Please come up.
Please come up.
Sergeant Tim Johnson, thank you.
Appreciate all you do, my friend.
Thank you, Dr. Summers and Board. Obviously, we couldn't be more proud to be serving in law enforcement in this community, first and foremost. This community is just bar none the best community to police, and that doesn't come easy. That comes because of great folks like this, providing the background, the great SROs at the school. So on behalf of the Monument PD, we really thank the school board for the great partnership.
Same with the Palmer Lake Police Department. My wife and I have been a part of this community for quite some time now. All four of my sons graduated from high school up here, and it's just nice to be able to give back and everything else. Like I said, we've been up here since about 2000, so about 21 years we've been in this community, and we couldn't be prouder to have people like Corey and everything watching over the kids and everything else. You guys have got two good, really good SROs right now, and I'm proud to say that, you know, we work with them a lot, and I'm proud to work with them. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Our next item is Student Voices, Lewis Palmer Middle School. I think Dr. Summers is going to introduce the participants here.
Very happy to. So at this time, we have several students, as well as one of our counselors, Ms. Haluska, and I don't believe Mr. O'Connor was able to join us this evening, unfortunately, but it looks like Ms. Sinkowski, assistant principal, is also here. So what I'd like to do is welcome you all up to the front of the room, and let me just say a few words, but I really want to turn it over to our students here who have been trained as peer facilitators or peer ambassadors around the No Place for Hate curriculum that was a series of, I think there was a couple of days that these students spent in training. One of those days happened to be on a non-school day, no less, so that just is testament to their support and their investment of time and effort as leaders in their school. And I believe without further ado, we have a few activities as well as just some information that these fantastic students are going to share with us. So we're excited to welcome you all. Thank you for being here. And without further ado, Ms. Haluska.
I'm going to turn it over directly to these guys, so I'm just going to pull up the PowerPoint.
And make sure you use the mic so that we're able to hear all of the great things that all of you are about to share with us.
If you guys don't want to share it.
Hello, my name is Will Gutormson. I'm in 7th grade in No Place for Hate.
Hello, my name's Scout. I'm really honored to be a part of for Hate Committee, and I'm here to share some information about the ADL and how we came to be a group. So, oh gosh, the ADL was founded in 1913. Where it began solely for the purpose of protecting the Jewish people, though it slowly grew into a group to protect all, from people of different skin color and religion to now children in need at school. The ADL is a large and spread group throughout our society, and now it's branched out to simply a group of kids making a difference in their school. Sigmund Livington was actually the founder of the ADL, and he did a great deal for a lot of people. The ADL is welcoming to all, and they really do make a big difference, from confronting discrimination and securing justice to getting involved in a lot of hate-powered physical confrontations. They have done a lot for our society, and they will continue to do so, as will we. The No Place for Hate Committee is determined to make our world a better place, one step at a time, with the guidance of both our ideas and each other. Will?
Sigmund Livingston, as Scout said, was the founder, and he noticed that some people were being mean to other people, and he didn't like that very much. So he decided to stop it. That tradition evolved, not really a tradition, but that foundation evolved over time into all sorts of different things, as Scout said, and became kids in schools noticing things that were wrong and wanting to fix those. So we, as the No Place for Hate Student Committee, strive to eradicate bias, prejudice, and acts of discrimination and just general acts of hate of many different kinds by facilitating a handful of fun and encouraging activities to grow awareness and attempt to stop these acts of not necessarily violence but hate by just generally raising awareness. With that, I welcome you to join our next activity called Who's the Leader?
Hi, I'm Josie Leiker, and I'm in 8th grade.
Hi, my name is Roxy Palmer, and I'm also in 8th grade. So for this activity, we're going to be doing Who's the Leader?
This short activity brings the group together to focus on one another and the topic of leadership in a lighthearted and fun way.
So anyone who wants to participate is welcome to. If you want to participate, you can come over here and stand up and join in a little circle of community. And we're going to play a little game, sort of. It's an activity, but it's fun too. So there are 3 different types of people in this game. There's just your general person who is going to watch for a follower who's going to follow their leader and engage in different activities, whether that be clapping or patting your knees or jumping up and down on one leg. There will be the leader who is leading those activities discreetly, so the detective cannot find out who's leading those activities. Now the detective, does anyone want to be the detective? They have to find out who the leader is. Scout? From the board, okay. Does anyone? You.
I was hiding over I'm just detective.
Yes, so.
Josie's going to go explain it.
So she's going to go help you with that. So while they're out there, we are going to figure out who the leader is in here. I'm going to go with this so they can't hear us. So does anyone want to be the leader and lead us in the...
Dr. Summers, would you like to?
Yes. I'd be happy to.
Okay. So I think most people understand you're just going to pat your hand and like every once in a while, just glance at him and like notice what activity he's doing, and you're going to do that too. And the object is to prevent them from finding out who this leader is.
So practice round.
Yeah,
Yes.
make it discreet.
Okay, so you gotta like totally be nonchalant.
Like,
We're just doing a practice. Okay. You're all on your own.
Great job, Mr. Taylor.
One more round. Okay. Here.
You asked first, I said.
are we doing the fourth question?
No, I don't think so. Wait a second. I just.
Okay, so now we're going to have what we call a reflect and discuss. So after we did the activities, we like to ask a couple questions and hear the responses from what you guys felt during the activity. So the first question is, what was this experience like for those trying to guess, for the leaders and for the followers? Anyone can take a stab.
Well, I'll start. Mr. Taylor made it somewhat easy for a moment because I think his focus was on the other half of the circle, so I was able to get away with the movement for some time. And as Mr. Schwartz already pointed out, it was a little bit of a workout, so that's always nice.
And it was hard to decide because everybody was smiling, so I could, no giveaways there.
What was it like, though, for you, Mr. Taylor, to have to figure that out all on your own?
I was actually getting dizzy.
What cues were you searching for to determine who was the leader?
The first to make a new movement, because I figured that that was the signal of the leader.
Thinking more generally about different skills and strengths, what skills and strengths do students need in order to lead efforts in addressing bias or bullying, or, for example, engaging a bunch of people in a circle by clapping your hands and patting your legs?
I think the skill of observation is pretty key. Is that good?
All right, we are now going to hand it over to our next group.
Actually, can I ask you, can I put you guys on the spot?
Sure.
You did this activity in smaller groups and in a big group. So what were some of the takeaways that you all had as part of this activity that you would connect perhaps to what we just did here?
I think that it's certainly more strengthening in a big group, because you're more connected with each person than, and it's also more organized. Instead of in tiny groups where you only have 4 other people to guess who the leader is. So I think it's better in a big group, and we had a pretty decent sized group, so that was pretty awesome.
I agree with Will. He was, spot on. When you're in smaller groups, it's kind of more chaotic in a way. You would think that would be more organized, but since there's only like 4 or 5 people, it's kind of harder and less organized. But in a bigger group, it's like more unified and organized.
I have to agree with them. I thought it was a lot more organized in a bigger group than in like a group of 5 or 4.
So can I ask a question? Which is more challenging or fun, organized or chaos, and why?
I guess I could say unorganized, because it is kind of fun having like just not knowing where it's going to go from there, because kind of like it's fun and kind of chaotic, but in a good way.
Chaos is fun for everyone except for the people who are leading the activity. And we learned that when we did the activity in our second day of training. I think when it's more structured, you can play it more effectively and still get a good time out of it.
I would have to say I like the organized one better, because it's a lot easier to handle, especially if you're the leader.
Thank you.
Well done.
All right, we're going to hand it off to our next group.
So our activity is the pyramid activity, and it's going over the vocabulary of discrimination, prejudice, stereotype, and the bias. So discrimination is the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things, especially on the grounds of race, age, or sex. Prejudice is preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. Stereotype, a widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. Bias, a prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way that's considered to be unfair.
Hi, so I'm Grace Kovar. I'm in 8th grade, and do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Amelia Romero, and I'm in 7th grade.
Yeah, so we're going to start at the bottom of the pyramid, which is biased attitudes. It's lack of awareness of privilege or stereotyping. And the next level is acts of bias, which it's making insensitive remarks, acts of exclusion, saying slurs, bullying, or name-calling. Then the next part is systematic discrimination, which is policies or practices of companies, organizations, or government resulting in unfair or unjust treatment. Then the next level is bias-motivated acts of violence, which is vandalism, threats, assault, terrorism against a certain group of people. And then the very top is genocide, and it's multiple acts of hate and violence against multiple or a lot of people.
So the No Place for Hate committee will be going around our school classrooms to teach about these words and walk through creating a pyramid of allyship, which helps promote inclusion of our building.
Yeah, that's all.
Hi, I'm Ellie Clark. I'm in 7th grade.
Hi, I'm Riley Call, and I'm in 7th grade.
Hi, I'm Jada Overson, and I'm in 7th grade.
That's the same person. Okay, so we're doing Stop, Think, Feel, and Act. So it's basically just like this activity to kind of get us engaged and read about like real world problems that are going on just like around us in our world or in our school and stuff like that. So yeah.
So I'm going to pass around these sayings of things that can happen in real life situations.
Grab one and just read it aloud.
Sure, yeah. Okay, and then if you want to stand up and read your like situation when you get it. Yeah.
Okay.
You're good. You can go.
If I stand up, I won't be able to be covered by the mic. So I could stand up and speak loud. What would you like me to do?
Just, I don't care. It's up to you.
All right. I am a transgender girl, but at school I have dressed like a boy and keep my hair short just to feel safe. It's the only way I know how to protect myself from being bullied or even attacked. Okay.
I'm one of few black boys in my school, and when I walked into the AP English on the first day, the teacher said, "I think you're in the wrong place."
Teachers and staff don't see me being bullied for being a lesbian as a big deal. They hear words such as dyke and queer as common teenage slang and even use the terms themselves on occasion.
Someone threatened to kill me if I went to school on 9/11 because they know I am Muslim.
Other students always want to touch my hair, especially when I get braids. I've spoken to the guidance counselor, and she just says they probably think my hair is pretty.
Just because I'm in special ed, people treat me like I'm weaker.
I've always been kind of afraid to stand up when I hear a gay joke because people will think I'm gay.
So now that we've heard all these statements, we want to go through some reflect and discuss, and we'll ask you some questions. What were some of your feelings as you listened to the statements being read aloud?
For me, I have 5 kids, and what resonated with me is that any kid has to deal with some of the emotions of these statements that we just read.
I think I put myself in the shoes of the people that we were pretending to be.
I would concur with that. Discomfort.
Sadness and loneliness.
Fear.
Feeling alone or feeling judged and wrong.
It was disheartening. As each statement was read, it kind of just built more and more of an awareness.
Yeah. All right. Our next question is, which statements or statement had the most impact on you and why?
I think for me it was the one that I read because I had to say the words.
All right, the next question is, what do you think prevents bystanders from acting as allies to others? How can we overcome those barriers?
In the context of middle school kids, I think bystanders not getting involved is they don't want to be singled out towards one group or another, and they don't want to be classified in such a way, whatever that might be.
I'm also thinking about the activity we did, the follow the leader activity. And when everybody else is doing something, it's a lot easier to follow. But if you're the only one that is singling yourself out as doing something different, whether that's the person who already feels different or it's me standing up for what's right, even though I know it's going to be hard, I might lose friends, I might lose support. That's a lot of weight to carry.
All right, the last question I want to ask is there anything you're going to take away from this exercise today?
Increased awareness.
Increased empathy, sympathy.
Do you guys have any questions for us?
What motivated you to want to be in this group that's making this happen?
Yeah, do you guys all want to come up? One thing that really motivated me to want to do this was, especially in the switch from elementary school to middle school, and all of the elementary schools in our district just like coming together and combining, is just seeing all of the wrong in our school and seeing how many kids got bullied, or just it didn't seem right because everyone was kind of judging other people for their differences, or thinking it's cool to be a bully and that if they're meaner that they'll be the cool kid in the school.
I agree with her. I always, like almost every single day, I see someone doing something mean or unkind. And it's always hard for me to speak out personally because I'm afraid of what other people say. And by joining this, I wanted to realize that sometimes you have to speak up in order to help those who can't help themselves.
Over the years, being in the school district, they have really pressed on that bullying is wrong and stuff, and I really liked that. But I feel like at a certain point, I started to just take that more lightly than I should. And so when I did this, and especially the Stop, Think, and Feel and Act activity, it really kind of opened up my eyes to like, wow, this actually really does happen, and kids do feel these things, and I felt horrible being in that position, and it just didn't seem right.
From when you were like little, you were told like, oh no, you got to stop bullying because bullying is wrong and it can hurt other people. But then when you get to middle school, it just increases and bullying becomes like more of like a thing that just happens on a daily basis. So you got to take the chance to stop that, to make others feel like they belong, because they do.
So for my point, can I share a little story? So I remember I shared this story in my training as well for this. So I'm a Christian, but I'm also homosexual. And I went to church with my family, as we do most Sundays. And there's not a section for my age and my grade, so I have to go with my parents into the big theater where they do all the big grown-up stuff. And I didn't like that because I get bored really easily. And so, but I really like to take care of children. So there was this thing you could do, like an orientation that I went to for to take care of the children in the classrooms when I went to church. But I went there, and during the orientation in the booklet they gave us, it said to do this, you need to avoid being active in and promoting a homosexual lifestyle. And this really worried me, and I pointed this out to the person who was giving the orientation, and I was told to leave, and I really didn't feel welcome there anymore. And that night, my dad came in to ask if I was okay. And I felt like I had to ask him if I'm a homosexual. Can I not, follow with God. He made me feel really welcome, and that's cool. But I joined No Place for Hate because I wanted to hear about other people's experiences, and if they had the same experience or something similar to what I did. And yeah, I'm here to try to prevent that from happening to anyone else.
There's not a lot, but there is some things that are wrong with our school. We're overall a pretty good group, but there are some things that we do that we probably shouldn't collectively. Everyone plays a part, whether it's good or bad. And it's not necessarily the big things like hurting people or getting into a fight. It's this little things like saying a certain word instead of another word that makes someone feel unwelcome. And that's why we're all here to try and prevent that and use just language is a big thing, and use the right language and not be using stereotypical words and other biased language. And there's some colorful language used to describe people that probably should not be used to describe certain people, and that's not very okay.
So bullying, I feel like often happens in like different forms. Like from a lot of my experiences, I feel like people like tend to hide it and pretend like they're joking, but often they don't really sometimes actually mean like that they're joking, and they just hide it like that so it doesn't seem like bullying. And it still hurts, and I feel like there's like a lot in our school, even if there's not like obvious bullying, there's still cyberbullying and things along the lines of that, so yeah.
The reason why I joined No Place for Hate was because I heard a lot of like bad stuff in our school, and I saw a lot of bad stuff in our school, and I really wanted to change that. So I joined No Place for Hate so I can try to change like that bullying in our school.
Being in No Place for Hate has helped me get a voice for the people who need it and not be afraid to stick up for them.
Anything else you want to ask us or wrap up?
I'd like to congratulate each one of you individually for embracing the concept that we're all good and that all of your classmates are good. As you try and, deal with No Place for Hate, that the other side of that is there's a lot of room for love, and it's central to our own personal happiness, but also the happiness of others. And we see what we look for, so always look for the best.
I concur with everything that Mr. Taylor just shared, and I want to thank each one of you. It takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing. So good work, and please keep it up, and as one board member, let me know what I could do to assist you.
Thank you all. Have a really fun evening full of homework and getting ready for school tomorrow. Thank you, Ms. Alaska.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, sir, I believe we have a representative from Tri-Lakes Fire in the back. Would it be appropriate if we recognized him at this time?
Absolutely. Is this Christopher McCarthy? No? Yes? No?
Chief Andy Kovacs.
Oh, okay.
I did pronounce that correct? All right. Come on up, Chief.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Be spontaneous.
This doesn't need detention.
No, we're grateful you came.
We'll give you a pass.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
You.
Thanks for what
Thank
you
you,
do.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
So our next agenda item is public comments. Per board policy BEDH, public participation at school meetings, all regular and special meetings of the board shall be open to the public. Because the board desires to hear the viewpoints of all citizens throughout the district and also needs to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner, it shall schedule time during some board meetings for brief comments from residents and property owners of the district, parents, and employees. There is one time for public comments, and it is limited to 30 minutes. In an effort to allow all who wish to speak, the amount of time dedicated to each speaker will be dependent on the number of people who sign up, with the entire public comment period not to exceeding 30 minutes. If 10 or fewer people sign up, each person will have 3 minutes to address the board. The sign-up sheet for public comments was available until 5 p.m. in our Learning Center meeting room. The board respects the rights of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. We believe that the public comments that are critical of district staff, however, often cause unnecessary harm to those employees and to the education of our students. As a result, we prefer that members of the public share any criticism of employees in writing with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising all staff and then involving the board as necessary. If you choose instead to address a personal issue publicly, please understand that the board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all who speak that they assume the risk of legal action by district employees in the event the affected employees believe that any comments about them violate legal standards. In addition, speakers may be asked to appoint a spokesman if the topic is a group concern. Lastly, keep in mind that we may have K through 12 students in the audience or online. Please keep all comments appropriate to our audience. We have 2 people tonight. First, we'll go with Shelley Agostu, a parent? Augustine, sorry.
Hi, I'm Shelley Augustine. I am a parent in this district, but I'm also an educational consultant in Colorado. And I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. One is we currently have a subcommittee in the DAC that is the SEAC, the Special Education Advisory Committee, and there's been a little conversation. We had a SEAC meeting recently, and we spoke with Rick Frampton and the people who attended, and Teresa was also there. And I'm just coming to talk to you guys a little bit about sort of recommending that we move with a formal subcommittee under the DAC for the SEACs. In other words, therefore, parents in the committee, on the committee, and constituents, community members can provide feedback and input around the unmet needs of students with disabilities and challenges for them in our community, in our school district. And you can start it in many ways. You can have a subcommittee group that starts to plan for it, a strategic planning committee, and lays out the guidelines in which the SEAC advisory vein would operate. I sit on the Colorado Special Education Advisory Committee for Congressional District Number 5. I don't speak as a member here tonight. I speak as a parent and as an advocate in the community, knowing the challenges that families face in regards to special education. And I think it's a really good opportunity for families and community members, as well as staff and other people, even students with disabilities, to come and bring their concerns and also answer questions that the district and the school district and the board may have regarding their unmet needs. The other thing I'd like to talk about is learning loss. So as an advocate, I see learning loss across our state with the families that I work with. As a parent, I see it directly with my own child. Last year, there was a great deal of learning loss for her as well, and as she stepped into her classes for this year, she struggled with lack of foundational skills from the prior courses that carried forward in support of the courses that she's taking this year. And she struggled with getting at the desk side assistance from her teachers, and we in turn have had to hire our own tutors for our child because there is no opportunity for her to get tutoring at her school. And and she's in a high school. And so with the ESSER 3 funding, I would encourage you to use your funding appropriately in providing staff or outside, people that you could hire that come in and service those children who are having learning loss but have no way to access that learning that they have lost. We have been recommended to use the National Honor Society students, but unfortunately they are overwhelmed with their own content and other academic and extracurricular activities, so we've had a little bit of a problem even making that happen. So, and then the last thing I'd like to say really quick is when you guys send out surveys, like the one you sent out to students recently, my daughter said to me, I didn't really have any place to make a comment about what the concerns were. I got to, give you a rating basically of like 0 to whatever, 10, I don't know what it was exactly, but she really would have appreciated an opportunity to share the areas that were of concern and how they were of concern. And I see that. I think I've talked to Rick a little bit about that in regards to the surveys for the SEAC, for special education as well, that you can't fix a problem if you don't know what the problem is. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Next, we have William Beck, parent and resident.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Bill Beck. I'm a parent of 4 D38 students. I really want to just thank you all for your leadership over the past 2 years. It's been a crazy, wild ride dealing with the COVID, and I want to praise the judgment that you've shown. Starting a point almost 2 years ago when we had no idea what to do, and we're all struggling to try to do something to make things better, and continue with your decision through to start this school year with limited restrictions. That decision demonstrated you were either listening to your constituents, making solid database decisions, or looking at the impact of students, possibly some combination of all three. As we enter a phase of high COVID spread in our region, even Governor Polis recognizes that New Mexico's mask mandate has produced no better results than Colorado's approach without a mask mandate. It's natural human instinct to want to do something, but it takes wisdom to realize the unintended consequences of doing something can erase any potential gains of our actions. And so it is with vaccines, as we have them approved for 5 to 11-year-olds and any consideration of vaccine mandates. Unfortunately, our cost-benefit analysis has been a trifle one-sided, with recognition of the benefits only and no recognition of any cost. Theoretically, these vaccines are safe and effective, with no side effects and no potential for long-term adverse effects. That's a nice theory, but how exactly are we to assess the true long-term effects with no long-term data? Why do we test Jonas Salk's miracle polio vaccine for 6 years with 1.5 million test participants before it was even approved for use, much less mandated? There are definitely some benefits to these vaccines, but the need for frequent boosters and the waning efficacy over the course of a few months call those benefits into question. And we've ignored any potential cost in an effort to elevate narrative over truth. We're part of the largest medical experiment in human history. I pray that our outcomes do show the benefits outweigh the cost, but it's too early to use our limited data to mandate that our children participate in this experiment. I just want to close by thanking you again for your time and continued service, and ask you to continue to protect our children as you do every day and every decision you make. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. We'll now have board member comments. Matt, would you be willing to begin, and we'll just work this way?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Just want to thank you, Mr. Taylor, and Ms. Upchurch for your willingness to serve another 4 years. It's a huge time commitment, and at times a strain on your family and other commitments, so thank you for your willingness to serve. That's all I have, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Mr. Clausen took most of my words, so thank you, Mr. Clausen.
Great minds think alike, right?
And so do we. So in the spirit of brevity, welcome for another 4 years. Thank you guys for being great teammates, and let's keep moving forward and stay ahead of the curve.
Thank you, Ron.
I will try to have brevity. I actually had a couple things. I wanted to first extend, they're not here anymore, but I did want to extend my appreciation for our first responders. As some know, my husband once walked the Thin Blue Line, and I have a lot of respect for the work they do. And as some may know, we also, our home was consumed in a fire 3 years ago up in Woodmore, and words cannot express our thanks and our respect for our firefighters and how quickly they responded and got to work on keeping that fire from spreading to the rest of Woodmore. So I want to say thank you to our first responders for keeping our communities and our schools safe and our students and all of us citizens safe. So thank you. I also want to share my kudos to our students. There's so much to be given, from our athletes to our thespians to our philanthropist students, two of which actually raised money for Shield 616 to provide vests for our first responders. But tonight I want to express how impressed I am with our student voices. At our DAC meeting on Wednesday, Bridget O'Connor and her LPHS students and tonight's students, the way in which they articulate their words makes me realize, and I know, and I'm very impressed with, when you have parents and teachers and educators that are passionate and engaged and care about our kids, then I am confident that our world will be in a better place in their hands. And I can't wait to see what the future of these students hold, but we are a good district. It was very impressive. And lastly, I wanted to share with my fellow board members a few notes and dates. I spoke about advocacy and work-based advocacy through the Colorado Association of School Boards at our last work session. And I had shared that I was potentially looking at being on the Legislative and Resolutions Committee, and I have been invited, so I will be serving on the Legislative Resolutions Committee for Colorado Association of School Boards. And we'll kick into gear once the January 12th to 2022 legislative session begins on January 12th. And it's a time commitment, and it's a worthwhile commitment. And I applaud Ms. Augustine for what you said. Thank you for advocating for our students, because that speaks to my heart as well. That's something that I think is important, to advocate for our students, our special needs students, and our funding, the way our school finance formula is calculated. I spoke with Terry Carver and Representative Geithner at, we had a town hall. A few folks were there also. And that was something that I shared as well as a priority for me personally, is looking at our financing and how our funding formula is calculated. And I sent to you all a Chalkbeat article. Governor Polis had to present his proposed budget the first Monday of November, and that is by statute. And in that proposed budget, he proposed almost a 6% increase in per pupil funding. Now, that budget we got a ways to go from point A to point C, because it goes to the Joint Budget Committee, and then that's presented to the legislative body to vote on in the spring. So, but education was at the forefront of that proposed budget as well. So, again, I'm excited to be a part of that advocacy piece. And then finally, I just wanted to say thank you for your words. I'm excited about where we're going and what we're going to be accomplishing, and I'm humbled, and I appreciate the community support. And I'm going to steal some words from a fellow board member who had some wise words to share with me, Mr. Schwartz. And I get thanked a lot. We all get thanked, but we also get told what we can do better. And I just want to say, don't thank me for my efforts. Thank me for the results. Not just me, but all of us. So we have work to do.
I'll just echo my appreciation for all 4 of my fellow board members. I think that we're moving in a forward direction amidst the background of COVID still, but still managing to get some really solid work done. And for me personally, I have had the opportunity especially the last month, I think, to be more in person and engaged with various events, and to have more interaction with your staff and teachers, Dr. Summers, and people in our district, and you can't say it without smiling, just being around the young people and the kids, whether it be sporting events, or for those of you who might have had the wonderful opportunity to see one of the theater productions. They have been fantastic. We also have now a number of young athletes involved in the new chapter of the Special Olympics Monument Warriors. So there have been a lot of really uplifting, community building moments, if you will. And I think that it's really important that we focus on all of those wonderful, wonderful things that are happening, while also acknowledging that there are some challenges still. And when you're in a school meeting and at the end, 5 minutes before the bell rings, they're looking for substitutes for a day, and we're short on staff, that is a real challenge that our teachers and staff are dealing with daily at various school sites. And I think that those are great challenges, and they also present great opportunities for us to come together as a community to support our teachers, our staff, and ultimately our students in everything that we say and the way that we do things. So in any individual way that we can impart gratitude toward the people who are helping our students, I think that's really important, and of course that dovetails with Thanksgiving. So I just wanted to, in addition to thanking all of my fellow board members, I really would like to express my gratitude to our entire community, to every individual that's been engaged with our school district, and for all of those who are thinking of being engaged in our school district. We need you, and we want you to be engaged, so please join us.
Thank you very much, all of you. Great comments. I actually had something planned, but I'm going to skip it. I am touched by first responders, and the reason I am is because it was just 2 months ago that they came to my home and shocked me back into rhythm, and thank goodness they did, or I wouldn't be here. I ended up in the hospital for a few days and had an ablation, which isn't important, really, other than the fact that I'm here. And I had such a great appreciation for recognizing first responders. You know, in a community, we all have a role. In a family, we all have a role. In schools, in the district, we have roles. But within each site, right, it's a community. And connectedness is really important in the school community. I so appreciated what I've seen and heard here tonight, where the voice of the student speaks out boldly about acceptance and connection. And frankly, as I called it earlier, love for one another. And I'm grateful to be in this community. I love Monument, Colorado. I love living here. I wish I'd have recognized that my wife was here earlier. So I have to now apologize. But I guess my thought is this, you know, if we have a unified vision of what we want for our school system, we can disagree on a lot of things, and that's good because it frankly gives us new perspectives that we can consider, but it doesn't make us disagreeable. I've enjoyed working for this board and prior boards for 4 years, and I haven't agreed with everybody all the time, nor have they agreed with me. I've found that to be very healthy because it's helped me understand a different perspective. And we still will and continue to find that. I think that's healthy. And I'm grateful to be with a board that is willing to, you know, have courage, to, you know, to be able to speak their minds, to speak what they believe and what they hope for. Because I've heard said that, you know, we may disagree, but we have the same goal. We have the same vision. We want what's best for this school system. This school system should be designed, and it should then be functioning so that these children in our community have the very best opportunity. I look forward to the next 4 years. I'm excited about it, and God willing, I'll be here. So that's it. Dr. Summers?
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you all. Ms. Wood is going to tee up the presentation slides, so thank you for that. And as she's doing that, I just wanted to echo a few things. First and foremost, congratulations, Mr. Taylor and Mrs. Upchurch. Very excited about where we are and where we're continuing. And I want to thank all of you, not only for your commentary, but your service, your sacrifice, and perhaps most importantly, your stewardship of the community and our school system, and I just am so humbled and grateful for our continued partnership in that effort. There's been a lot that's happened over the past month, but I wanted to start somewhat on a somber tone, and it actually perhaps is fitting that we also recognized first responders as well as heard from our student voices. There was, as you may have heard, a very tragic situation up in Aurora earlier today. There were 6 students who were shot outside of Aurora Central High School. And as a former member of that school community, I just wanted to share our thoughts, our hearts, our sympathies for those that are affected by this. You know, when we talk about no place for hate, no place for violence, we understand that takes a unified effort, not only for those who respond to those issues. God willing, they never have to happen close to home. However, we recognize that in our great nation, state, and so forth, we've had too many of these types of situations over the years. And so to do everything that we can to make sure that we are protected from such acts, as well as that we're doing everything that we can to take care of each other in that process, is something that we are ultimately invested in each and every day. And again, just hats off to Dennis, your team, our SROs, our entire community in that shared effort. I'm finding that it is somewhat challenging to keep this succinct, but I'm going to do my best to share with you some highlights, both in terms of our priorities within the strategic plan, as well as some other great spotlights of different occurrences within our system over this past month. So beginning with priority 1, I think as you are well aware, we have launched our student climate survey. It is underway for grades 3 through 12. We did have some hiccups in administration, but we're sorting those out. There was a small amount of opt-outs following that communication, but we're looking forward to processing through those results and leveraging that as one piece of feedback from our students and sharing that information both back with our schools as well as with the district, our board, and the community as we continue to process through what the implications of all that are and how we make sure that every student has a sense of belonging and support in their everyday engagement with school. So as you saw again this evening, just another shout out to our No Place for Hate peer training. I can tell you that exceeded even my greatest expectation for how our kids showed up today. That was inspiring and as you can tell, very illuminating in terms of what we can continue to gain from their perspectives and supporting every student in feeling a sense of engagement in their process. Something else that Lewis Palmer Middle School has also done is launched or relaunched a commitment to the importance of social emotional learning. And I think in education sometimes we can get enamored by the acronym, but there's a lot more going on than just 3 letters or just the terms themselves. What you can see, and it's a little bit difficult to process every part of this slide, but there's a few different, or actually 5 different components of the building blocks that we refer to when we talk about our commitment to supporting students in their efforts around self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, social awareness, and relationship skills. You know, it's interesting. I think sometimes you hear in education a buzzword around, well, the soft skills, the things that aren't necessarily as academically oriented. And I think what I would argue is that these are skills that we recognize are fundamental to success beyond the school system and will carry our students as far as they possibly can go into whatever their field or particular discipline is that they're interested in. So when we talk about whole student or whole learner development, these are some of the pillars that are underneath that. Of course, we can spend a lot of time unpacking each of those, but I appreciate that as a board and as a district leadership team right now, our role is to continue to make sense of what this means, how it's implemented, and ultimately reconnect that vision to our why in terms of every student having the support and the pathways toward a successful future. As we think about our current COVID situation, here are the updated numbers as of Friday. And at this point, there is definitely ongoing discussion with the county in terms of where we're at in relationship to the numbers and the trends within the community. I really don't have a ton of detail or updates to share other than there's a recognition from County Health that there has to be a continuing effort to process forward, if you will. And so what we anticipate is there's going to be some revised guidance that's going to be forthcoming that will help shape some additional efforts across the landscape of the county. And by revised, I don't necessarily mean anything that's more restrictive right now, but just a gradual and an eventual reconnection to how we're continuing to move forward through the pandemic. I can speak to any other questions that you may have on this slide, or just leave it for now.
Well, if I might, wasn't it just a year ago that we were planning all remote learning?
Indeed it was.
Just a year ago now.
Yes.
And that lasted through the holidays.
Through
right?
the end of December and into the beginning of January, yes.
Yeah. It doesn't look as bad as last year, does it?
Well, I think the answer to that is the role that vaccines play has certainly helped reduce the need for mass quarantining, as well as we've learned a lot from what we've done and what we know worked or didn't work. So I think, again, as a school system, and I continuously hear from my colleagues in other school systems, we are continuing to persevere and persist through this and do so in a way that is ultimately about helping continue to provide the types of educational experiences that our students deserve.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the feedback that was shared earlier on that.
Dr. Summers?
Please.
Is there any data on the amount of student days absent with these figures compared to pre-pandemic?
Not that would, how do I want to answer that? It would take a lot to mine that. Obviously, any student absences that are a result of being isolated as a result of being positive typically translate anywhere from, depending on the date of when that positive case emerges, to 10 days later. Yes, there's that individual impact in terms of what that translates to at a broader system level. It would definitely take some significant math to make that apparent.
Nothing at the state level either, at least that we know of yet.
I've not seen anything that the state's produced now.
That would be an interesting number.
It would be.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. All right, moving along. Priority 2. So there's just a few highlights that I'll share. There's certainly several more slides that could also live under this priority. But as you know, we are on a monthly basis spending time with our district leadership team, including all of our principals, in a visit to all of our different schools. So our visit to Kilmer occurred last Wednesday. Couple of highlights from that visit. Just a big shout out to all of the Kilmer staff in terms of the way that you can just tell the culture that they have that is often referred to as responsive classroom supports, but it's really about how the staff work together to ensure that all students' needs are met and responded to in a timely and efficient way. Certainly not without different challenges that pose or are posed by either staff shortages or just intensity of student behavior, but just nothing but amazing observations, if you will, that we were able to spend time with. And then they have a really neat concept of what they refer to as learning zones, and that's a specific period of time within their master schedule where students are, as a product of what their academic data is telling us, are located in various sections of the school, classrooms, and supported by a variety of staff to really meet the students where they are and help them on their learning progression toward what's next. So what you might see, for example, in a particular classroom is a group of students who stay with that individual classroom teacher, a few others that may be working with another specialist, perhaps a reading interventionist, who is specifically targeting student needs in somewhat of a flooded concept, because it's all a function of how they appropriate their staff as a function of student needs and schedule. And it's just a really neat concept, and we're seeing some really compelling data that's coming from that. So I wanted to lift those two pieces up. As mentioned earlier, I think Ms. Upchurch, you touched on this, the DAC meeting that was hosted at Lewis Palmer High School last week, November 9th, was inspiring again from a student-led presentation that was facilitated by a few of their students, as well as Mrs. O'Connor. We spent some time in Priority 2 update around both our SEAC, Special Education Advisory Council, as well as our GELT, or Gifted Leadership team. And then we spent some time, again, with support from our student interns and Jess McAllister in developing processing through some additional feedback around our profile of a graduate. So we're really excited about how that work is progressing and eager to share those results in the near future. Also along those same lines, we had a career advisory meeting for our career and technical education group, and there was quite the turnout, not just of our own staff who are career and technical education teachers and faculty, but we had several businesses that also were present at a late start meeting that was on October 27th. So we were able to receive some really interesting and engaging feedback from our business partners and some really exciting work that's occurring at that level. In terms of Priority 3, we are continuing our efforts around substitute teacher gratitude, both in terms of thank you bags and other goodies that are going to be delivered to our substitute teachers, as well as launching our substitute teacher training and shadowing programs that will be implemented. And there are so many different new teacher support efforts that I would have to use multiple slides to be able to elevate this, but I wanted to, in particular, celebrate not only the new teachers that are engaged in the induction process, but the mentors for those new teachers and other teacher instructional leaders. It's just really exciting to see how teachers are supporting other teachers in their introduction to the profession and support within our system. So the other thing that is not listed on the slide, but I do want to elevate just briefly, is the fact that we are taking those staff presentation efforts around the compensation conversations that we started back in October. So for those of you that have been able to and will be able to show up, thank you for that investment of time. And we know that that's a huge task that's in front of us. And I just want to make sure that everyone hears loud and clear that our teachers are absolute heroes and champions of so many great things that are happening in some really challenging times. So we're really dedicated to making sure that all of those efforts continue to be acknowledged and rewarded as we keep moving forward. In terms of Priority 4, and we'll have a little bit more of this update built into our agenda this evening, but we are very close to completing our application process and announcing our Financial Advisory Committee, a little bit delayed from what we had originally intended starting in November. So what we're going to intend is communicating that to the community here in the near future, and then scheduling our first meeting after the turn of the calendar year. So that'll be in early January. We'll be talking about October count and what the implications of that are. And then here's kind of a fun school fundraising effort success that we just wanted to highlight, the Raise Craze fundraiser at Kilmer. So we had our very own principal, Drew Francis, who was tasked with dyeing his hair green based on the effort between parents, administrators, and students who generated more than $28,000 in donations for Kilmer Elementary after students performed more than 800 acts of kindness in the month of October. So there's more information on our news story website, but you see a quote there from Mr. Francis. In a year that is challenging, it feels really good to know you have people supporting Kilmer Elementary and D38. And I don't believe he's maintained that green hairdo, but we can continue to remind him of what that looked like. Lastly, priority 5. So as we published last month, our post-board meeting roundup, October edition received more than 8,600 views. We have a new D38 news website that has been launched and more than 300 stories that are already being consumed. And then just a quick reference for those that have received this invitation. We will be hosting, actually, Building a Better Colorado will be hosting a meeting here in the Learning Center tomorrow, November 16th, with a priority focus on K-12 funding and the state of education in Colorado. So looking forward to what manifests from that effort. Here's just a quick snapshot of that D38 news and updates page. And then in alignment with more good news, we had last Wednesday a signing day. So huge shout out to 13 of our Lewis Palmer High School and Palmer Ridge High School athletes, student athletes who signed with collegiate teams. Several signings including those at the Air Force Academy, BYU, University of Idaho, and more. So that did receive some coverage, both internally from our communications team as well as some nice media coverage. And then, as you know, the fall sports season is all but wrapped up. There's still, I believe, the one team that is left right now is Palmer Ridge High School football team. So you can see several state qualifiers for Palmer Ridge. Some really good finishes. Volleyball made it to the semifinals over the weekend at the World Arena and unfortunately fell just short. But beyond just the accomplishments of these student athletes and these teams, what I've been really impressed by for the opportunities that I've had to engage or attend these sports is the level of sportsmanship and the essentially the recognition from both schools. What it's really about is not just who wins, who loses, but how our students work together, how they compete, how they perform. So can't say enough good things about how our students represent themselves, their schools, and our community. You can see the fall sports update for Lewis Palmer High School, multiple state qualifiers as well as several students who have been named to all conference teams, honorable mention, etc. And then we were able to spend time last Thursday doing several virtual recognitions of our veterans. So there are a number of school-posted tributes, including videos that you can find, again, at that news.lewispalmer.org that were just really special tributes to all of our veterans, which we, again, want to just thank for their service in our community and beyond. And I think as also alluded to a little bit earlier in board comment, just another major shout out to all of our talented artists and musicians and performers on a number of fall performances. So we were able to see a joint effort of the Lewis Palmer High School and Palmer Ridge High School jazz concert, as well as the Palmer Ridge High School Wind Ensemble and Symphonic Winds, Lewis Palmer High School's band performance and alumni spotlight, and then Palmer Ridge musical, Once Upon a Mattress, as well as Lewis Palmer's musical of Matilda. Both wrapped up, I believe, Once Upon a Mattress last week, Matilda the week prior. So kudos to all of those students and their performances and all the great work that went into making that happen. And with that, I'm not sure that I was timed, but I think that brings my update to a close unless there's any other questions.
Great update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go on to our board discussion action items D1, which tonight we're going to have an update on our priority number 4, practice fiscal stewardship and financial transparency. And Dr. Summers and Kitty Overton will provide the update.
And Ms. Overton and I have been working diligently. Actually, if you want to grab that one right there, Kitty, that would be great. So I'm going to keep my intro here pretty brief. We are really excited to share with you not only an update following the work session that we engaged in a couple weeks ago, but our efforts around a next step in our framework. So with all of that said, Ms. Overton, I'm gonna, now that you got mic in hand, I'm gonna let you take it from here.
Yes, I finally got the mic in hand, or out of hand.
Beautiful.
Okay, well, I'm excited to present the work we've been doing on Priority 4. Priority 4 of the strategic plan is demonstrating, practicing fiscal stewardship and financial transparency. We had the opportunity to work closely with the board. I'd like to thank you for your input during our work session. I think the microphone stopped for a second. Okay, so during our prior work session, and I have October on here. Was it October or November? Anyway, our prior work session where we did the work on Priority 4, we broke into groups, and the task at hand was to examine each of the other priorities of the strategic plan through the lens of the financial priority lens. Those conversations resulted in some good ideas and feedback to this process, and those conversations are summarized in a document that you can find attached to board docs. So if anybody wants to look at the details of some of those conversations, it can be found there. But the ultimate goal was to help us develop a financial model that can provide a framework for how financial decisions are evaluated by the district. What I landed on, or we landed on, was that there are 3 components for developing this financial model. The first step in that development is to forecast our revenue. And it's important to remember that we need to look at that in terms of short-term forecasting, which is going to consist mostly of our PPOR and student count from year to year. So when we're in the current year budget, we're constantly monitoring those enrollment numbers until they're finalized. And of course, in the spring, as we're starting to develop budget for the next school year, we're closely monitoring what that PPOR amount is going to be for the coming school year. We also want to make sure we're taking into consideration long-term revenue forecasting, so looking at our demographic analyses, monitoring Colorado State legislative initiatives, and monitoring the local tax climate, for example. There are other things, of course. And then the second step in developing this financial model was really the result. These results came out of those conversations that we had during that board work session. So primarily, we always want to ask ourselves the questions, is this initiative going to align well with our priorities of the strategic plan? And then we want to very carefully define what the need is, how much it will cost, and what are the potential opportunity costs that might be associated with any financial decision that we're looking at. And then finally, we want to be able to have some way of measuring, especially the significant financial decisions that we make, and measuring the outcome of those transactions and decisions for the budget. And then the third step in developing this financial model is the budgeting decisions that we make. And again, those are both short-term and long-term in nature. Short-term, we might be asking, is this funding coming from a new source of funds, or is it taking away from one need and giving to another? Long-term, planning for our future needs, making sure that we're addressing deferred maintenance needs, adjustments to compensation perhaps, and growth of the district. So with those things in mind, I'm going to pull up
Can I ask a quick question?
Workbook. Oh, sure. Yep.
Can you give me an example of a potential opportunity cost?
So for example, excuse me, if we, for example, are deciding to use a particular curriculum, are we going to be funding that new curriculum from a new source of funding, or are we perhaps eliminating an older program, replacing it? So the opportunity cost is what you're giving up in order to support some new decision that might be made.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to pull up a workbook here. Vicki, I don't see it.
Is this what was emailed? Is she pulling up?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways to access this. There is a link in the executive content section of your agenda. It's been shared with you as a Google spreadsheet, so it's live, if you will. However, we did take editing rights and make them more viewable. And so what Kitty is pulling up here is the demo. We've also attached that as a PDF to the public content section of the agenda, and then it actually lives as an Excel document as well. So feel free to access it however you desire, and or you can just kind of follow what we have up here on our projector.
So I'll just kind of walk you through this. It's obviously a work in progress, but basically what I've done is taken the budget as it exists, the adopted budget, and put it in a little bit more of a summarized format so that it's a little bit easier to get a grasp of what the numbers are and what they mean. The first tab in this workbook is the summary tab. It primarily houses the revenue. So along the left-hand side, you'll see, excuse me, you'll see each of the funds that we have in the district, and those resources are then broken out by local, state, or federal sourcing. So as I scroll down here, you'll see that's the general fund, insurance reserve, and preschool, which are a sub-fund of the general fund. And then we've got nutrition services, grants, pupil activity, transportation, bond redemption, cap reserve, and building reserve. And you can see each of those are broken out by local, state, or federal resources. Across the top, these are the actual numbers from the adopted budget in column E. So these are actual numbers that were supported by board last year for this current school year. And then there's a little interactivity here where you can just drop in any number you want, and it'll pull over to the next column, just so you can, the user could sort of play with the numbers and say, well, what if we did, an adjustment to this revenue line, et cetera. Taking that forecasting out a few years, this is just a rough estimate of 3% per year, but we could get very more detailed in that analysis as far as changing the numbers to agree with whatever the state is talking about or any other initiatives that we might know of that would affect our revenue in coming years. Down at the bottom here, I've dropped in the the budgeted expenditure lines. So these are actual budgeted numbers, and they feed over from the expense tab. So for example, this is the general fund expenditure adopted budget, and this is broken out in terms of programming, and then each program has a breakout of salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, equipment, and other. So it's a little bit repetitive, but it breaks it out by each of those programs that we see in the district. And that's kind of how we break the budget out for CDE as well. So it kind of follows the format that they ask for. So you can see that's our general fund budget. And here again, you can pop in numbers here to make adjustments and see how that impacts the bottom line. And then on this tab, it's all the other funds. The second tab is just general fund expenditures. The third tab is all the other funds with the same concept. And then those adjustments can feed back to the summary page so that we can see just what impact any budget adjustments are having. Any questions on that?
I have just one. So down under line 91, nutrition. So the $1,829,850 was our flexible budget. You've added a little bit to it, so it's now 1878, and we'll get to a point where we have a final budget approval. But when I look at that number, the 1.9 million, right? If I go up under your fund balance for nutritional services, we had 1.9 roughly, but we've got another 655, so now you got 2.5 million in that fund. Is that intentional?
These are the numbers from the adopted budget in column E, and column F shows the beginning fund balance as predicted based on numbers ending 2021 school year. Does that make sense? So I guess, could you ask the question again?
Yeah, so what you're referring to as adopted budget, I'll continue to refer to as flexible budget, because we haven't really adopted a final. I mean, we said this is flexible budget, and we approved that in June. That's what you mean by adopted budget, right?
That is what I mean by adopted budget.
So the
yes.
flexible budget number had no beginning balance. Somewhere we found $650,000.
$650,000 is the ending fund balance based on unaudited 2021 numbers, so that ending fund balance from 2021 carries forward into the new school year.
But it wasn't in the budget, so.
That's correct.
I mean.
That's correct. And to your point, the 580,000 general fund allocation, because of that, it may not be needed. So during the budget.
That wasn't my point. I was trying to figure out where it came from.
Okay.
But now you told me it's, as soon as we have a final audit, that number will be finalized as well, 653. So we may have some excess funds in this fund account for nutrition services based on the 1.9 planned expenditures, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I was just trying to understand that.
I have a quick question. If Mr. Taylor, are you good? Okay. In the spirit of transparency, one of the things we've been attempting to do for a year now is show ourselves and the public how much we have in savings, which we call reserves. Is the cap reserves all of our reserves, or purely for capital projects like buildings? And is this the right place to begin to show how much we have in savings?
Yes, so if we move down towards the bottom of the workbook there on the summary tab, if our, and this is all part of the working budget for 21-22 school year as well, where we predict our ending fund balance, and then how do we break that ending fund balance out? So what is already spoken for by certain requirements? Some are legislative in nature, such as Tabor, that we have to put a certain amount aside. And then others are, this is just inventory, non-spendable, committed, and what's assigned for other funds. So that 2.6 in school activity, if you think of it in terms of overall balance, that's the amount that is attributable to the school-raised funds for school needs like athletics and clubs. And then bond redemption, of course, is set aside to pay off our bonds. And then the building reserve is money we've been holding on to for various needs. We took some of that and put it into cap reserve for this school year. We moved it from building reserve to capital reserve to help fund the Schneider Electric project.
And then is the unassigned 9.2 million our savings?
That would essentially be funds that are available for spending, yes.
Is that our reserves and our savings? Is there any reason we can't call it that so that we know what it is and the public knows what it is?
I don't think there's any reason we can't use that terminology, no.
Do any board members have an objection to us calling it
What would it be?
savings or reserves?
The last line that's unassigned.
I think there's quite a bit of confusion over how much money we start with, all that goes in us and all that goes out us, and how much we end up with.
Even after looking at it this way, or
Yeah,
general confusion?
both. But my point
What
is,
can I just push on that for a moment?
Sure.
What isn't clear about 9.2 available that's unassigned?
then let's put how much savings do we begin the year with? How much savings do we end the year with? Then we know how much we had to dip into or add to savings. Because it's important that we maintain money beyond Tabor in case we have a true disaster or cash flow challenge that we need to fund the school system for 30 or 60 days.
Okay.
Right? And I think the board resolved to have a 16% of expenses amount anyways. And if we know what that number is, and we have significantly more than that, and we're in a position to where we have some hard choices, then at least we know where we go get the money.
So it's not completely depicted in the way you just described it there, but I don't think we're that far from it.
I believe we're really right there, but
Yeah.
we need to designate a separate line item for what we have in savings or reserves.
And the other component to that, as was mentioned earlier through the lens of where we sit with our audit right now, is we want to make sure that that is a verified figure as a function of our updated flexible budgeting approach that we anticipate will be finalized. Well, I don't know if we want to get into all that right this second, but it's happening as we speak.
Right. So maybe once the audit is complete and our figures are verified, we can begin designating this as savings.
Well, and let me build on what your question is on that line item unassigned. The adopted budget or the flexible budget said 9.2 million, and now with the adjustment of 2.7, it's now going to be 11.9 million. Is that a correct understanding of this?
I would be reluctant to commit to that number until the audit is finalized. I've pulled in the beginning fund balances for some, but they're not verified.
Okay, so this model is a first draft.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I shouldn't really, I agree with what you're saying, Ron, about the description. Why not, right?
While we're in a draft mode,
It's
this is the right
terminology.
time to have this discussion.
So I have no issue with that. I think, let me make sure I'm clear on something. So the audit for 2021, June of,
July
no,
of 2020.
21 to 22 of June is not finished. Brief update.
Brief update is the auditors have essentially all of the information they've asked me for to date. They've had the trial balance for a couple of weeks, and they believe they can commit to having preliminary financial reports for the December board meeting.
Awesome. What about closure of that, where it's final? Don't we have to submit that to the state?
It is
before the
due
end of
to the
year?
state by the end of the year. We can file an extension request, which to my understanding we have done in the past. We're not as far along in the process as I'd like to be right now. Filing that extension is more of an insurance policy. It would still be my goal to have it completed before the end of the year, but having the approval for the extension would be a good idea.
Okay, so in my 4 years, we haven't extended, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened in the past.
I apologize. The auditors suggested to me that
No,
the
no, no,
past
it's-
2 years it was.
If it was, I wasn't aware of it.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter that much to me. my point here is we need to finalize that because it's hard to work on this modeling without a good starting point. Right now, our starting point would be July 1 of 2022 for this year's budget that we're really kind of reviewing here. And then I see where you're kind of forecasting out over time, which is a model. But we probably ought to, board members, I think we need to give our finance team leeway from the long-term forecast model to focus on, let's get the audit done, because we can't really finish this flexible budget without the beginning point.
Right.
And we are pushing the limits on time. So I know last year we didn't approve it till January something, I think, as I recall, the budget, I mean. But I'm inclined that we basically ask Dr. Summers and Kitty to not focus on the long-range strategic plan that I love so much, by the way, but give her some time to really focus on closing up that audit so we can finalize this budget. And it's clear that this model that we're seeing is dependent on those two initiatives being completed. So in some respects, I want to apologize because I think I've really pushed you for this model, and I'm fearful that it's distracted you from the basics, right, of the audit.
Yeah, we as an exec team have spent a lot of time on all the priorities, so I don't think it's been any more of a lift than it would have been otherwise. I can assure you I spend a lot of time on audit tasks as well. There was a lot to sort through, lot for me to learn in the process, so while I'm about a month behind where I would like to be right now, I feel pretty good about where we're going with the CLA audit team and getting those numbers as quickly as we can.
I appreciate what I just heard, but I also know there's stress involved in that. So I'm really considering just your personal welfare here too, because you seem like somebody who's going to deliver no matter what. And I want to be careful that you don't burn out in any way, that you get discouraged. We want you to feel excited every day to come to work. And so this is just me reflecting. I just think we really should kind of relax. It's the holidays, it's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas. We got a lot of things on your plate. And I think we need to just say the strategic plan, this model that we're talking about, we can pick it up in January or February. And we really should just focus on what has to be done. That's all I'm saying. Dr. Summers, I mean, is that?
No, I think we appreciate that sentiment. I would echo what Kitty mentioned, which is we've approached this work very much as an and as opposed to an or. But we absolutely concur that in order to have a solid grasp of the starting point, we need those audited figures to really guide that baseline. And we're really excited about what this framework provides as we work toward then budgeting, well, first and foremost, approving the finalized budget for this current fiscal year based on those audited figures, and then really diving deep into what our short and long range forecasting efforts will include going forward.
And the beauty of what I'm seeing here is you got a great foundation now to build from, because once you get your final numbers, this will kind of roll, it's going to roll forward pretty quickly, it looks like.
Yes, what I like about this format is the summarized vision of what when we look at the budget as it was written, it's very detailed, and we need that detail behind the scenes, but for decision making and for future budgeting, I think this conciser way of looking at the numbers is helpful.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions on this?
I would just want to say that I actually am excited about the work that you're doing, and I know it's daunting, and for me it's daunting just to look at it, but moving forward with our vision, and when we're talking about the audit versus this format, I agree. I don't see it as an or, but as an and I just appreciate the work that you're putting into this and the deep dive that we're looking at. and I applaud our leadership.
Anything else you'd like to share?
For priority 4, I believe that's all. But we have more to cover.
The next agenda item, right? Thank you very much on priority 4. I just would like to add what Tiffany just said. I think it's a great job you're doing. And it's exciting to see this because once the audit's done, once the budget's final, this is going to lay right out. I love it. Thank you. So our next
Thank you, Kitty.
next agenda item is number 2, financial planning and analysis. This has all of our normal monthly reports. If you don't mind starting with the enrollment, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, so there is another document here. You all have seen the enrollment numbers, and these are the, I guess, semifinals of the numbers for pupil count. But we did drop those into this document, which we shared with you a few weeks back, just to kind of show where we were in terms of the adopted budget, the flexible budget, as you like to call it, and then dropping in the new semifinal numbers from the October count. So we can see the impact on revenue. So although there was an increase, much of that went to Monument Academy. And so in this section here, you can kind of see we extrapolated out the dollars associated with the pupil count. This number includes Monument Academy, and then Monument Academy's portion is removed down here. Does that make sense?
Can you point again? Where is it?
So here's the total PPOR, and then these are the line items for kinder transitions, which are just calculated at a different PPOR cost. So that includes Monument Academy, and then we take out Monument Academy's portion there. So the increase is approximately 1.3 million.
Kitty, that allocation is based on student count?
Yes. So based on the new numbers that we're having certified, those have been submitted to CDE, but they have not given their final approval on those numbers.
And that lasts until the next October count, correct? That percentage?
It applies to the 21-22 budget year.
Yeah, the only other frame I would add to that is just the crosswalk from what that 6637 total count number reflects is not a 8501 PPR multiplier of the 6637. So that's why we had to do some of the breakout of the math that you see to really zoom in on exactly what is the full-time funded pupil count as a function of all of our different district programs, as well as those that are charter-based, or when we talk about preschool, HSEA, halftime kinder, and transition, there are varying dollar amounts that we have to address so that we're consistent with what that total revenue figure will be. All that said, CDE should provide an updated run that is based on not only this year's count, but a function of a 3-year average. So our projections on this budget analysis, given the October count modifications, will be vetted in conjunction with that CDE updated run. So that gives us greater confidence in exactly how that number is being figured, and then, as Kitty mentioned, the validation process of what that count looks like from their lens to our lens. Sometimes you get down to individual students that they may be counting different, and we say, here's why we are counting them the way that we are, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of that behind the scenes work that's still occurring, but this is a pretty good, close to probably final amount that we're looking at as far as that revenue adjustment.
And the district website that shows the October count history that goes back 10 years. That also includes the choice ins and choice outs. That will be updated once CD is final.
Correct. That should also be on a December, no later than January timeline.
Okay.
That's correct.
Any other questions, comments?
Chris, I have a comment that, and I don't know if this ties into this. Kitty, let me ask you, we certify, by statute, we certify our mills, our local mills, December, right?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, so at the CASB convention coming up in December, you should be seeing information coming out soon. The CDE is looking at setting up meetings with boards if they'd like to look at how legislation may affect local mills and how this might play out, and that might be some good questions to ask as well.
Along those same lines, we are prioritizing that item into our upcoming work session November 30th, and then moving into December 13th where we have to certify mills. So lots of conversation to come around that particular topic. Thanks for illuminating that.
You just raised another thought. The October work session, or the November work session, Bob presented the bad news about the Geothermal Project. Is that going to be on an upcoming work?
We are currently working with our contractor to get an updated list of a new estimate. So I'm not sure that will be completely ready in full by December, but we are targeting by January, no later.
Thank you.
Thanks for remembering.
Yeah, anything else? If not, let's go on to the, thank you, Kitty. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have consider approved policy revisions. This is the second reading. I'd like to make a motion to approve the revisions to the following policies. JB, equal educational opportunities. JF, admission and denial of admission. JICDD, violent and aggressive behavior. JICDE, bullying prevention and education. JII, student concerns, complaints, and grievances. BEDH, public participation at school board meetings as presented. Comments?
I'll second that motion, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Can I just ask Mr. Frampton, aren't a lot of these, they lie under you? And are most of, from, as I understand and having looked at them, most of them are minor changes. Was there anything that raised your eyebrows that was beyond, that might be something that might warrant a longer discussion?
I don't believe there are anything that we need to discuss. Most of it's minor word changes that aligns with the law. So when there was a legal change through the legislature, CASB has taken that those changes in the law and has made recommendations, and all the recommendations before you have been vetted and presented to us by CASB as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify where the changes were coming from.
With the one small exception of BEDH, which
Correct.
we discussed on our own initiative. So that's
Right.
the one small exception to the CASB rule there.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Great, thanks.
So I recall back when we were looking at, thank you, Rick, when we were looking at policy revisions back 4 years ago, it seems like we would put in there what the purpose for the revision was. So I'm wondering if that's something to bring back as an idea of, and yeah, when I looked at these, they were all those all statutes. And if you look at that bill tracker I put out a couple weeks ago, you can see exactly on that bill tracker where these align with state statute. But I'm wondering if it's helpful to say This policy is due to state statute. This policy is due to,
Well, you could just add a column to that matrix that we have.
That's exactly where I
Just
was
put
going.
in a column, it's a good idea, Tiffany, and then as we approve things, or as I guess maybe after the first reading.
We're happy to add that level of specificity just to aid in the support for the why behind the action. Absolutely.
Yeah, and in that, I've spoken with several of the board members about this, just in the spirit of hopefully being efficient. It's hard to read the whole policy and get caught between the commas, and you get lost over the original intent of the policy in the first place.
Sure.
So that would be super helpful if we just understand if there is an impact, or as Mr. Frampton said, this is really changing nouns because of a tweak in the law. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
My only comment is I find it interesting that the bullying prevention and education policy was updated on the night that we had such a great presentation from students. It's Providence. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, could we have a vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I will second the motion, Mr. Taylor.
Comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
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 Let's stand adjourned until our next work session on November 30th?
30th.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.